I hope all the panelists and the participants are already here. So we are good to go with the starting of the session. Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to this international panel discussion on data privacy and metaverse being organized by Techlawedge. We extend a heartfelt gratitude to respected panelists and dear participants for taking out time for this informative session and hoping to be a knowledgeful and insightful session for everyone. As I move forward, I would request all the participants to kindly keep their mics muted all throughout the discussion, and in case of any questions, kindly drop them in the chat box, which will be answered during the Q&A session. Also, the link for the feedback form will be sent across in the chat box and everyone needs to fill it. Without taking much time, I would now like to invite Mr. Rishabh Malhotra, the member of Advisory Board of Techlawedge, to kindly take over as the moderator for the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aditi. I would like to thank Techlawedge for granting me this platform and to moderate this session, a wonderful session. And also like to thank to all the panelists who took out the time from their busy schedule to share their expertise on the same. Before we start the session, let me introduce the panel members. Mr. Alexandru is a founder of our Inperspective organization and a senior data privacy counsel having the experience of more than 13 years. Thank you, Mr. Alexandru, for joining the session.
Thank you very much for having me, and hello to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next is Dr. Jane. She is the head of the interim chair of the World Metaverse Council of UAE and also a founder and director at Blockchain and Digital Assets. Thank you, Dr. Jane. Next is Mr. Rodney Ryder. He is a profound Indian cyber lawyer and a founder partner of Scriboard. Thank you, Mr. Rodney, for joining the session.
Thank you, Rishabh. It's an honor to be here. And, it's a great privilege to listen to my co-panelists as well.
Thank you so much, sir. Next is Dr. Gagandeep Kaur. She is an assistant professor in IT law at a senior grade level at working at University of Petroleum and Energy Studies in India. Thank you, Dr. Gagandeep.
Thank you, Rishabh, for the invitation.
So now we can start with the questions with to the panelists, and we can start the discussion on the same. So there's a question for Mr. Rodney. So according to you, what is actually a metaverse? Like we are hearing about a lot of metaverse nowadays. People are thinking it is a new technology, but actually how it works and what does it mean?
Right. The metaverse at the moment can mean a couple of things. One, of course, we know that we are referring to a virtual interactive space or platform. And this, due to the rise of technology, is like nothing we've ever seen before. So to call it revolutionary would be an understatement. At the same time, the metaverse is not perhaps singular at the moment. There could be multiple metaverses, if I can use that word, and multiple platforms which are truly interactive, which have great potential thanks to virtual reality, augmented reality, and so many other things that come together to make this space a very robust and viable space.
Thank you, Mr. Rodney. Any opinion from the co-panelists?
Are you looking for the definition of metaverse? It's Jane Thomason. I've just joined.
Hi, Dr. Jane. Thanks for joining.
Sorry, I was late. I was stuck in traffic.
No problem. Thanks for joining the session.
My pleasure. Hi, good to see you.
Same here.
Yes.
So would you like
Doctor. Yeah, please.
No, thank you very much. And I didn't hear everything that the other panelists said, but I just wanted to maybe add a few additional thoughts. As was pointed out, there are many different types of metaverses. There are more than 600 companies that are building metaverses. But one of the classifications that I think is important for people to get their heads around is that I see that we've got at least 4 different kinds of metaverse builders, if you like, in terms of categories. So as was pointed out, it is the confluence of AR, VR, and gamification, immersive realities, blockchain. But you've got, first of all, the big techs like Apple, Google, Meta, Facebook, and so forth, building metaverses, and these are likely to be similar to their existing business models. So in as much as they are extractive of their consumers' data, these aren't going to be open, transparent, decentralized metaverses, but they'll probably get a lot of people joining them because they've already got, 3 billion customers already that they'll offer an additional service to. Then the second group are the gamers, and reminding you there's 3 billion gamers worldwide, and they already have metaverse-like experiences, and some of them might be adding tokenization, for example, to allow the exchange of value. And then you have the group like Decentraland and Illuvium, who've set out to be Web3 metaverses, which means they're decentralized and peer-to-peer and transparent, and have the opportunity for communities to lead their development. And then the final one that I think we should think about is the category of governments who are now entering the metaverse and using the metaverse for provision of citizen services, healthcare, and education. So I just wanted to add those comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. Any other opinion from other panelists? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Alexandru.
Yeah, please.
So as we are aware that Metaverse is nowadays the advanced version of internet, and I would understand it like Metaverse is an extension of real world into a digital realm. And we can say the most prominent features of Metaverse is a sense of immersion, a real-time interactivity, and user interface. So obviously, in order to enter into the metaverse, we use different technology. We need to hands-on different technology, that is VR, AR, virtual reality, augmented reality. So I would consider that in the coming future, we are going to be in metaverse.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gagandeep. Any opinion from Mr. Alexandru? Okay. Okay, we will proceed with the next question. So this is for you, Mr. Alexandru. How data is gathered and used as AI is biased towards the data of the individuals captured in order to train the programs? So what's your opinion on this question, sir?
Yes, and sorry for the previous question, I was having a problem unmuting myself, but I want to say before I answer to this question, I want also to make a slight comment about Metaverse.
Sure.
I think it's very important to understand that there will be this virtual reality, a parallel virtual reality in which people can interact. The problem is that they will not just interact with each other, but they will interact with certain chatbots, for example, digital humans. And these digital humans will react to whatever the users, which is the humans, want to do. Also, humans will have avatars, and these avatars can be created as they wish to be perceived in the metaverse. So you have the possibility to create your own appearance in the metaverse. I will tell you at the end, or when I will see a fit, I will tell you my fear about metaverse, which is very much related to the appearance that anybody can have and can choose for themselves in the metaverse. But I think the closest we have been to metaverse is when we were playing Counter-Strike or when we were watching Avatar at the cinema, the movie Avatar. So I think this is a very good example about how to imagine metaverse reality, and about the question how data is being gathered and used, and regarding the AI bias towards the data of the individuals. I think as metaverse promises a new way we interact in a virtual reality, the artificial intelligence brings metaverse closer to its realization. So therefore, I think all related artificial intelligence risks are inherited by metaverse. So you have privacy risks and how data is being collected and used. You have data bias, as artificial intelligence is biased as the data and the people training the programs. Therefore, the quality of the data and data verification is very important for a safe metaverse. Legal responsibility, this is also a risk, and we need to determine who is responsible for a metaverse reality that can harm users. And it can be the developer of the code, the company implementing metaverse, or we should also take a look at the artificial intelligence technology enabling certain metaverse functionalities. Also, we have another risk, which I highlighted before, interaction between humans and the new metaverse reality. And how will metaverse affect humans and the order of our society as we know it? To stop only at bias, because the question was related to bias, I would say that next to lack of appropriate privacy control, bias is the next most important risk when it comes to artificial intelligence in the metaverse. And here is why. First, if the interaction between people in the virtual augmented reality is subjective, if it has certain prejudice, or if the relationship, the interaction between people and certain entities in the metaverse is based on too many assumptions. So all these problems, all these issues combined together can make an unsafe metaverse. And so the societal bias and the data bias, which is one of the two most important elements of the artificial intelligence bias issue, is also being, as I said at the beginning, inherited by metaverse. So the quality of the data which is actually being used to build metaverse becomes crucial for the safety of this digital environment. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Alexandru. Any other opinion from other co-panelists?
I want to very much agree with all of the points that were raised, and also raise the issue of ethics, because thinking about ethics in the metaverse, I mean, and ethics anyway with AI and digital, is going to be a really important issue for society to be thinking about, because there's technical issues around the metaverse, but there's also what can the impact be on consumers? How do we protect children in the metaverse? How do we stop people using the data in a way that, you know, could in some way be controlling of people because they know so much about them, because they've got more data points in the metaverse than, you know, there ever has been before. Informed consent, I think, will be almost impossible in the metaverse with all of the IoT devices connected. So there's a whole body of work that also needs to be done around ethics.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. There's a very nice input from you.
Yeah, I'm 100% agreed with Dr. Jain and Alexandru on this point, and I would like to add over here that if we understand the working of Metaverse, it's very, very important to understand that how we are entering into the Metaverse. I have seen from, there's one movie, Ready One Player Ready One. In that movie, they have actually highlighted the sense of Metaverse, that how it's going to be in the coming future. And I have observed that while entering into the Metaverse, there is a different technology. And one of the thing is, if consumer will use the new technologies, they will use electrography enabled haptic gloves. And there are different devices through which we can touch, we can feel, and we can have a real sense of that particular thing that is happening. And it's not going to happen with imagination. It will reflect on our body. If there is something, our body will feel like it's actually happening. So the thing is that how the data is going to be captured through these devices, for how long data is going to be retained through these devices, and what is going to be with our data. That is not at all regulated anywhere. Like nowhere in the world there is any regulation or any regulatory body which is working on that, how these devices are retaining the data and how long they would retain the data. Even in GDPR, if I read GDPR, and even in that, these high-tech gadgets are not being discussed. So yes, data is being gathered, but it's totally unregulated now till date. Thank you.
May I just add a comment there, please? Thank you for that very important point. I just wanted to let you know that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, had their first meeting for standard setting for Metaverse, and they have, I think, 7 different working groups who are working on different aspects of it, and they will be covering off on this issue. So I just wanted to let you know that, in terms of one of the formal international institutions, but also at the World Metaverse Council, which we have recently started up, which is more like a, I'm going to say, a distributed thought leadership network of people from all around the world. We have a group working on regulations, we have a group working on standards. So we're trying to crowdsource the knowledge and the research to put it in front of, anyone in the world who wants to see it, because the developments are happening so quickly all around the world. It's very hard to capture that knowledge and synthesize it in one place. And we feel institutions will probably be slow to do that.
Nice. Yes.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with Dr. Jain that the nowadays. Yes, Mr. Alexandru, please.
No, sorry. I will wait. Sorry.
Thank you. So yes, nowadays the transformation of the laws has been developed so much with the equivalent to the technology development, and every countries are developing their own laws now. So to coordinate with the technology and to provide a better protection with that. So I totally agree with that. Thank you.
So if I may, I was listening to the opinions here, and I was actually wondering, why do you think people will want to engage with Metaverse?
I'd like to have it. Oh, sorry, I've switched my video off. I'd like to pose an answer to you, because I think that's a very good question. And if you think about why people would engage with the metaverse, I think you're going to have this one group of people like the gamers who are pretty much already engaging with the metaverse, and maybe we'll be offering them a deeper, more immersive experience. I think that the second thing is where the metaverse adds value to someone in their life. So it may be that young people, and we have to remember that it will be the Gen Z and the Gen Alphas who are the ones that are going to be inhabiting this space more than people of my generation. They might want to socialize in the metaverse. They might want to go to concerts. But for me, the big move that I think we should all be thinking about is how it can help us extend healthcare services to maybe people who are underserved, or improve the capacity of doctors by extending what they can do with digital twins, or with kind of AI-assisted avatars, and think about what it can do for people. Perhaps they're disabled, perhaps they're elderly, they can't leave their homes. We can offer them services in that way. And then the big one for me is education, because you're going to be able to offer 24-hour education to anyone, anywhere around the world, and education without the requirement for walls. And, you know, I've seen some really exciting developments going on in education. And I think that that's probably why people will enter the metaverse, because even in skills development, if you think about the number of people who are going to be displaced now by ChatGPT, and then you think about how quickly we've got to retrain them with other skills, you know, to be able to maybe become metaverse developers or something like that, then these are the opportunities, if people are moving fast enough, that can be made available outside of traditional institutions. And I think we're going to see at some point, someone's going to invest big time in metaverse education. And I think that this is going to be something that really becomes widespread and accelerates as people see how they can access education in a new way.
Thank you so much. Any opinion from Rodney, sir?
No, I was just enjoying the discussion and the points. Everything was summarized, but I also think that along with regulators and policy makers who are thinking about the metaverse, many of the fears that we have will also be answered, in my opinion, by providers, by the platform, by service providers who will also offer, for example, privacy protection services, technology, so on and so forth. So it's not going to be just a one-way street where the metaverse, where only the so-called problems will prevail. We found many creative ways to look at problems on the internet as it exists today. And I'm confident that we will find those problems, and importantly, that there will be service providers. There already are, but I see that specific fears, concerns will be answered. And there is a clear market for that. So I see people stepping in towards that market.
That's a wonderful point. I'm having some questions on this. So from the participant, first question is, how do you think big players are disrupting the metaverse, and what would be the impact on original players and new entrants?
I'm happy to try and have a go at that question. I think that we're going to see tremendous transformation and disruption in a number of industries. And what we're already seeing is a lot of players. I mean, brands are entering the metaverse, real estate companies are thinking about how they can use the metaverse. Health and education, as I mentioned, governments are looking at the metaverse, and some governments have deliberately taken on requiring people to have metaverse strategies. So I think there's a lot of learning going on. There is no doubt, and we see it right across the board, that there's resistance going on, and that you're going to find a lot of the traditional players will be resistant to these things. But I think that you're also going to find that we need two things. One is really thoughtful, well-crafted education programs for governments, for corporates, for institutions, helping them understand how these technological tools can actually help them provide better services or do things more efficiently. Without that, we are going to have resistance from regulators, we're going to have resistance from government, we're going to have resistance from, if you like, the legacy leaders of the old institutions. as the new world moves forward. But nevertheless, the new world is moving forward at a faster pace than many of them can even fathom. And that's why education is so important.
Thank you. Okay, there's another question. Do you believe that Metaverse can replace the quality of education and skill development that an instructor-led training can give?
If I were to step in, the way we look at it, and of course our learned panelists will add and their experience, but the way I see it, a very basic point, if you show a person a picture of an apple or the Taj Mahal or the pyramids versus actually taking them there, actually making them experience. So I think this is going to be a very exciting experience for all of us, for educators, for people who want to really make people develop hands-on. In every craft, in every profession, you have the ultimate learning experience when the apprentice watches the master at work, learning through practice. And I think there can be nothing, because the wealth of experience that there will be on the metaverse, the kind of things when it reaches the full-bloom stage, I think that was very exciting. As Dr. Jain pointed out, Dr. Thomason pointed out that there are a number of areas where the metaverse is going to be very exciting, and education is certainly one of them.
And thank you very much, sir. And if I could add to that, your point about can it replace an instructor? The issue for me is that so many more people can be educated if we're creatively using the opportunities that the metaverse has, because maybe one instructor can do 30 students or 50 students, but there's a limit to what that person can do on a one-on-one basis. And we can really scale things with the metaverse. That's the first point. The second point is, why do we sit children in classrooms all day being bored when the metaverse can offer gamified, interesting experiences where we're able to monitor their learning in a far more precision way than we've ever been able to before, and the teachers can see when they're not learning something and offer them additional micro courses and so forth. And whereas the Honourable Sir has just said, they can go and experience what it is they're learning about, be immersed in the human body in ancient Mesopotamia or whatever it is that you're wanting them to learn about. So they're going to be much more incentivized to learn. And then finally, if you're in a Web3 metaverse, and let's say you're really wanting to incentivize people to become some sort of new career that we don't yet know what it is, then you can incentivize them to learn. You can actually pay them to be learning so that you're rapidly accelerating the acquisition of skills. So there are a lot of, it's different and it's scary for the one-on-one instructors. But remember, the doctors always said they had to see the patients before the pandemic. And what happened in the pandemic? They learned that they could do an awful lot without direct patient contact. So I think it's the same thing. And the instructors will also have to learn the new tools, have to learn new ways of learning. But the benefit is so many more people can experience it.
Thank you so much. There's another question from the participant. What role do governments play in regulating metaverse? How the government is regulating the metaverse?
Look, I've just come from a two-day conference discussing these things, and I think the answer is it's always the same story. Technology is advancing so quickly that many governments are struggling to catch up. So as I said, the leading telecommunications organization in the world is just setting up its standards body for metaverse, and it's going to take at least a year, probably more, for these standards to be drafted and developed. And many governments, not all, I must say, are really not up to speed with the developments. But if you look at some, like Seoul in South Korea is going to offer citizen services in the metaverse. Saudi Arabia and Dubai have got metaverse strategies and are investing heavily in it, and others are following. But again, I think to your student's question, governments need education to understand what these technologies are, how it's going to affect what they can and should do, and what they should be thinking about in terms of consumer protection, ethics, and regulation.
Thank you so much. Now we proceed with the next question. In India, this is for Dr. Gagandeep Kaur. In India, what are the relevant legal provisions on privacy?
Yeah, thank you, Rishabh. This is one of the most relevant questions when we come to the regulation part of Metaverse. So at present, in India, we have only one legislation that is dealing with the regulation of cyber world, that is Information Technology Act. So my answer would be little longer, I hope, because there are few laws that I want to touch upon. So IT Act it came into existence in 2000 in India. But later on, it was realized that it is a hurried legislation. And under the influence of UN Citral Model Law 1996, we launched IT Act, but many things were missing. So in 2008, it got amended. And in that amendment, Section 43A was added. So Section 43A is the exact section which is dealing with the data and regulation of data. Now, in 2011, under Section 43A, SDPI rules 2011 was introduced, and that were dealing with the privacy of data rights. It provided in India the right to review, right to withdraw the consent, and right to correct the data. Now the situation is keeping in view the speed with which technology is growing. Law cannot grow because law is coming from the parliament, and in parliament it should be as per the Constitution of India. Constitution is a grand norm. Any law which goes against the Constitution of India cannot survive. So it takes time. There is a Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, then president, and the speed with which technology is growing, we can't match. The day we take an iPhone, next month it's just outdated. So how can we say that the law can grow with the speed of the technology? Now, what happened in 2019 in India? We have Data Protection Bill, Personal Data Protection Bill 2019, that was enacted under the chairmanship of Shri B.N. Krishnan. That is popular as B.N. Krishnan Committee. But what happened in 2022? In August 2022, that bill is withdrawn because there were so many recommendations from the researchers, from the people, from the opposition that this bill is not adequate. And in November 2022, another bill, DPDP, that is Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2022, is passed. And if I have read these bills in detail, and there is a comparison of these two bills, and yes, so many things have been improved in 2022 bill. Now, most surprisingly, and one of the most interesting update in India is Indian government has proposed Digital India Act 2023. So this is proposed act, Digital India Act 2023, and this act is going to change the entire scenario. Why? Because it is going to replace the IT Act. So I have been teaching IT Act from so many years, and now I have to study the Act again, a new law. So it's going to change the DPDP bill. It's going to replace all the existing legislations. But the good news is that India is coming up very soon with its own data protection policy. And it's going to include IT Act, all the DPDP bills. So we can say that in a few months in India, we will be having data privacy policy. Obviously, many things we have taken from GDPR, but still we can implement it. We can launch it. We can say that yes, in India, we can enter into the metaverse without any kind of effect to our data. Yes.
But I think in 2021, if I may step in, the tech world in India was so powerful that they actually stopped the law, right?
We had law since 2000, and we have been making amendments in that, implementing those laws. Still, so a very good observation, Mr. Alexandru, and here I want to add. So the scenario is, in each and every application, there are click wrap agreements. So the moment we click on click, yes, agree, shrink wrap agreements, so we are giving our consent. So on the basis of these consent-based applications and agreements, everything is going to be streamlined. So that is why we are not facing that much trouble. But having a law is always a better for our country.
That's a wonderful point, Dr. Gagandeep. Any other opinions from other co-panelists?
I just add to that, excellent summary by Dr. Gagandeep. And I think she hinted at this, but I'll just elaborate. I think the arc of learning and implementation needs to be faster, not just for India, but around the world. No longer can we draft legislation that will necessarily stand forever. There is nothing wrong with the laws as they were drafted then, but I think the courage to come out with new versions to address newer problems, even smaller, quicker amendments, I think that would be excellent. And I foresee that that is and will happen in due course.
May I just add a comment around the cross-jurisdictional issues? Because India will be able to pass its legislation, but we need to remember that many of these metaverses are multi-jurisdictional. So how value moves between jurisdictions and what are the rules and what are any of the global standards or global regulations like anti-money laundering, terrorist financing, and these sorts of things apply, needs to go into everyone's thinking for this to be functional outside of a single geography, and many of the metaverses will be. And one of the challenges that I think we're facing now is that you've got like different big countries and big groups of countries doing this without a great deal of collaboration. So, the US is doing what it's doing, India is doing what it's doing, China will be doing something different, the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth are doing something else. And so how we can deal with those interjurisdictional cross-border issues is something that will face all jurisdictions, irrespective of what their own domestic legislation is.
That's a wonderful point. Okay, we can proceed with the next question. What are the implications of metaverse on different sectors that can lead to the growth of industries? That is for you, Dr. Jain.
So as I said before, I think that every CEO of every industry has to be looking not just at metaverse, but at the intersection of all of the different technologies that could converge in the metaverse, but that are taking place, and how it's going to impact on their industry and how they can harness these tools. But also there'll be such a lot of reskilling required of workforces. I was looking at some American Bureau of Labor and Statistics workforce with their projection of jobs in the future. And it really does give us the need to pause and reflect, because what they were saying is that, first of all, everything obviously to do with computers, data analytics, IT job statistics, and so forth, that's going to be a growth industry. Interestingly, healthcare, and in its broader sense, including yoga instructors and massage therapists and all of the other, a whole holistic healthcare will be growth jobs. The third one, interesting, was everything to do with human entertainment and food and entertainment and sports and all of those things. And then the fourth one was people to fix all of these electronic things that we've been making and that we're using in the metaverse. So the reason that I say that is I think that the future is going to be quite different from now, and all industries, all CEOs, all governments need to be thinking about and challenging themselves and their teams on how it's going to impact their particular industry. Because I do think we could be on the verge of more of what we call the Kodak moments, where industries are not ready, and then the technology moves fast and overtakes them, and in fact they become extinct, if I can use that word. So I think it'll affect all industries. But if you look at the Citi report on the metaverse, they're saying I think it's going to be a $13 trillion industry by 2030. And if you look at other estimates of AR, VR and education, multi-billion-dollar industries. So there's huge opportunities for growth. And I think that the challenge is to be picking the areas where growth will take place and picking the areas where change will take place. So, for example, we're already seeing the College of Radiologists is getting less applications for radiologists because we now know that in many cases machines can read X-rays more accurately than humans. And so it's only the highly specialized interventional radiologists that will probably, you know, have a lucrative career in the future. So thinking about what industries will be affected and will be automated, therefore, how they need to be changing now. So auditors won't be auditing financial statements, they'll be auditing code, for example. So there's opportunities, but people need to be envisioned and understand what the tools can do, and then think about how best to harness them for their industries.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. So I'm having one question, like if you're talking about these sectors. So what is the impact on lawyers, legal sector? Like the metaverse is like providing some virtual reality and where we can relate to the physical world. So how it can be impact to the lawyers to fight a case?
So look, I think there's a number of dimensions on that, and one is with you know, with AI and a lot of the sort of machine processing of information, a lot of the lower level legal tasks are going to be taken away and are going to be done by machines. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that it'll allow for the virtual arguing of legal cases, and we've already seen some examples of that, and I'm sure you're well aware of them. I also think lawyers manage to profit from almost every new development that ever takes place. So there's going to be a whole burst of metaverse law that people will invent and become specialist on, and will charge a lot of money to help you solve your cross-jurisdictional issues. So I think in as much as the law will be impacted by the automation of certain tasks, I think lawyers are smart people. They're going to figure out where their next opportunity to put some billable hours will be. But I think it will allow you to have collaboration on cases in virtual spaces, and indeed judges will, I'm sure, hear cases in virtual spaces.
Any opinion from the co-panelists?
Yes, I have to catch my breath from chuckling at what Dr. Thomason just said. You know, lawyers, rightly do have those skills. It's one of those skills, perhaps, you know, you learn, or rather you breathe in through the air at law school. But like in any other profession, my concern is for a kind of a metaverse digital divide between lawyers across the country, the way I see it in India. And it's very important that all of us and all law schools, all universities adopt and skill lawyers, help them to understand, and of course help them to understand how their clients or potential clients are approaching the metaverse, and how their clients will function, what kind of problems there are, and of course benefit from the tremendous tools that will be available to lawyers. I mean, 25 years ago when I started in the profession, at that time, case law searching was coming to India for the first time. We had compact discs on which case laws would be available. And that had never happened before, because before that, a lawyer's time would be spent looking through digests and looking through cases. A lot of time would go, would be, forgive my words, but would be wasted on such activity. And I remember, jokes apart, one afternoon as a young lawyer, while in the middle of research, I thought to myself, which are the Supreme Court cases in India which contain the word chocolate? I must have been hungry. It must have been after lunch. And I entered the word in the Boolean search, and 2 cases popped up on tax or excise law. It was very funny, but it would have taken me tremendous time to search or sift through to search for the word chocolate in all the cases. So that was revolutionary, mind you, 25 years ago in India. And of course, it came prior to that in other parts of the world. So I see this changing the way. I think it's incumbent on us. It's our duty to absorb these skills and, of course, look out for tools. There are some very, very interesting articles on how lawyers can use tech tools, including ChatGPT. So it's not always adversarial. A number of us tend to look at technology as adversarial, and that, I think, would be a big mistake. It's definitely a blessing. It's definitely something to embrace. Embrace, of course, with caution, but embrace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodney. That's a wonderful insight. Yes, please.
Yes, I also want to make a comment here. IBM is developing Watson artificial intelligence used for lawyers since 2012. They have reached already a 75% accuracy in providing legal consultancy, which is, I think, extraordinary. I just saw last night someone was showing me a very good legal disclaimer, which was contractual legal disclaimer, which was entirely written by ChatGPT, which I thought it was very amazing. It looked like as it was written by a lawyer. And I want to make an emphasis about lawyers, which are not the most versatile and flexible people. They are not really, and I'm also taking myself as an example, they are not really the most technical people. I'm trying, I'm making an effort to be, but I think that it will not be the metaverse which will replace some of the lawyers. It will not be the artificial intelligence who will replace some of the lawyers. I think it's going to be people eliminating other people. So if you are a tech savvy and you are a tech lawyer and you want to know about these things, you will not want to work with a lawyer which doesn't know what the technology is. So you will not want to work with someone who doesn't align to the current technological needs. So if you're not interested, well, you better be interested, because I don't think some of your coworkers will want to work with you.
Any other opinion from Dr. Gagandeep?
I would like to add. See, for me, if I think about the impact of metaverse on legal domain, one of the most troublesome part that comes to my mind is evidence. Because as we are moving into the metaverse, so there will be simulations, there will be data virtualization, augmented reality, virtual reality. So in the entire scenario, how would we take the evidence? Like whether those evidences would be admitted in the court of law, what would be the competent witness, what would be the qualification of a witness. So our entire Indian evidence, so I am talking in Indian context, it would need to be relooked. And in addition to this, there are multiple challenges, because whatever I have studied about metaverse, most of the business entities are entering into the metaverse. So when business and entities are entering into the metaverse, there are land owners, virtual land owners, virtual land renters, then antitrust laws and competition laws would again come into the picture. So it's not only one law that is going to be affected. If we talk about consumer rights, we talk about yes, again, competition policy, IPR, so Indian evidence. So it's going to impact at a, I believe that it's going to impact at a multiple perspectives. And another important aspect is IPR. So just before Rodney was discussing about ChatGPT, and Dr. Jane, Dr. Alexandru, seriously in research, like I'm into teaching and research, if my profession is a professor. So I give assignment to the students, do a research. What they do, they just put it into a ChatGPT and they are coming up with assignments. So ChatGPT is writing for them. So they are not doing efforts. So I explain them that when I was in PhD, I was in LLM, we had to go to the library, find the books. Lot of time just goes into the finding the content and then to read next. Now ChatGPT is writing term paper, dissertations. ChatGPT is doing research. Then again, who will be having the copyright? So few challenges would not few, like it. There are multiple challenges that are going to be in future due to the metaverse and all. Yeah.
That's a wonderful
I
point.
just wanted to maybe, so I know they were great points, and thank you so much. Oh, I just wanted to, add a couple of thoughts, because I think you've correctly highlighted the challenges, for university professors with students using ChatGPT. But I think this also highlights the fact that the skills that students need in the future are going to be very different skills than they used to need back when you had your CD-ROM and you were searching, for chocolate, because that's going to be done for them. And so they're going to need higher order critical thinking skills. They're going to need to be able to critically analyze what ChatGPT's produced and see if it's accurate, because I think we've all learned that apparently ChatGPT states with utter confidence things that are rubbish and based on biased data sets. So teaching them to look at that, and then the higher order problem solving skills. I was also thinking about your evidence, and I'm not a lawyer, but I was actually thinking that if you're kind of using blockchain to certify the evidence, when, where, how, what time that it was collected, in fact, you're probably going to have a much safer and more secure chain of evidence into the metaverse using the blockchain. But they were just a few thoughts. I thought your answer was fabulous. And the other just one to add around intellectual property is, if you go into a Web3 metaverse where the community's all contributing to the development of the metaverse and where it's going, and they're adding things into the metaverse, then who owns that intellectual property when you're actually in a sort of open decentralized system? So there's just loads of jobs for lawyers coming up in the metaverse, folks. No problem there.
I totally agree with your point. Okay, we can proceed with the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so next question is, how Metaverse affects the individual's data privacy? So this is a question for Mr. Rodney.
Apologies, I again lost the mute button. As was highlighted in the beginning, the newness, the pace of technology, all of that will have a serious impact on the individual's privacy. We need to understand the full gamut, the full universe of risk, what can be done for trust and safety, what can be done for specific privacy concerns arising out of specific needs of the metaverse, for example, avatar privacy. And then, of course, looking at the kind of context for data, who has access to the data collected, how is the data going to be collected, used, is there an assessment impact mechanism, and how do we hold companies, organizations, and all data collectors, processors accountable for data. And lastly, of course, to have individual privacy at the center of this entire scheme of things.
That's a wonderful point, sir. Any other opinion from the co-panelist?
Just to add that whatever privacy concerns we have with Web 2 are going to be manifoldly increased with Web 3. And I think we also need to give some thought to the fact that many, many, many people have already given up their privacy to Apple, Facebook, Meta, Google, because they want access to something. And we all tick the yes, we agree to your policies. Most people don't know what's happened to their data. They don't know that it's being on-sold. Most people don't know that, the majority of the cloud services in the world are provided by 2 providers. What happens if those providers decide to do something differently or close down? There's a lot of different big picture issues around privacy that we already have problems with, and they're only going to be absolutely amplified in the metaverse. And Professor Rodney, I think your points are absolutely critical, and I think that there's going to be so many more. And your issue about avatar privacy, but also avatar rights and avatar responsibilities, because is it acceptable for your avatar to break the law in the metaverse? And then in what jurisdiction would that be dealt with? So there are some new questions coming up that people are going to need to be considering.
It's a great point. Yes.
So I shared with all the participants a very interesting study which is done by Accenture, and I think Accenture has right now the most worldwide used metaverse. So they are the most advanced builders of metaverse in the world right now, and they have published this report on their website, which I provided here as well, and they are indicating that one of the top 3 concerns of users in the metaverse is safety, security, and privacy. So these are the top 3 factors that are influencing the respondents' willingness to engage with the metaverse. And to go further with that, they say that 55% in average who say metaverse and social media will be the same. So they make a comparison, the users are making a comparison in which they say that there is not much difference between social media platforms and the metaverse when it comes to privacy. So 22% of people, they say that social media is worse, and 23% of people say that metaverse is worse. So I believe this is a very important report to look at, because they discuss a lot about what does it take to build a responsible metaverse.
That's a wonderful point. So we can proceed with the next question. Dear panelists, we are concerned with our time. Hardly 15 minutes left, so we need to wrap it up, and we can then share the feedback form with the participant, and we can close the session. So we can proceed with the next question. Determine who is responsible for a metaverse reality that can harm users: the developer of the code, the company implementing metaverse, the AI enabling metaverse functionalities. This for you, Mr. Alexandru.
Yes, well, because I just discussed about responsibility here.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very hard topic to deal with, because responsibility is actually being fragmented when it comes to metaverse. For example, we said before that metaverse uses virtual reality, uses augmented reality, along with artificial intelligence, and blockchains are also used to create this world. So I think that the most advances metaverse, which exists right now, is built, as I said, by Accenture, and they explained what are the issues of responsibility. Builders of metaverse have responsibility for the initial, fundamental, and core principles of the virtual reality. And the companies that will actually use metaverse for their own commercial purposes will be responsible for the rules they settle in correlation to their own activity and the way they actually use the metaverse for. So you have first the core principles of the builders, and then you have the principles of the users, the company, which are going to use the metaverse. Not all companies which are going to use the metaverse will actually build the metaverse. Accenture is let's say an exception. They cannot build the metaverse and they can use the metaverse as well. However, I signaled before that there is a fragmentation from a legal point of view of the responsibility, and this is a very big problem from when it comes to metaverse, which was also highlighted by Dr. Jane before, because there are multiple domains that interconnect in metaverse, and some are regulated, some are not. So I think the issue can be resolved by horizontal legislation, but this is very hard to do because there are so many domains that interconnect and so many legislations, some of which are not being adopted so far. We have the case in Europe. They are discussing about Artificial Intelligence Act since 2019, and still the law is not adopted. So yeah, we still have to discuss about responsibility in the metaverse.
Absolutely.
May I add a couple of points to that? Thank you very much, for that really comprehensive answer. The couple of points I just wanted to have people think about. One is, who's responsible for a metaverse reality that can harm users? That means the people who are coding, building these platforms actually need to understand and think about the concept of harm, and that brings in the concept of ethics. And generally, software engineers and coders and people like that don't have the training in that area to be able to think about what that impact might be. So I think there's an issue about responsibility, but there's also an issue about making sure that the people who are building and developing these actually understand some of the potential harmful social consequences that might happen as a result of what they're doing. The second point I wanted to raise, and this indeed is something that many lawyers and others will be thinking about, is how you look at responsibility in decentralized autonomous organizations. So in Web3, a lot of people are starting to build Web3 programs around these decentralized code-governed organizations, which aren't set up like a traditional company. So there's not a company that can be liable in that situation. And people are developing different approaches that they might use, including regulators actually, being a node so they can see what's going on in the organization. But that will be a whole different set of challenges when the metaverse developers is a DAO or a decentralized autonomous organization, not a traditional company.
Absolutely.
I want to make an emphasis of a certain point here. I am reluctant a little bit when it comes to training software developers into understanding ethics. I think they should make teams with lawyers who can understand certain building codes and who can provide ethics by design and ethics by default concepts. I think privacy by default and privacy by design concepts can also be enhanced by lawyers or artificial intelligence sustainers. So I think you don't really have to train coders to learn some ethics principle. They can be developed if they make a teams with lawyers. Also, lawyers have to make a team with the developers to understand some technical inputs and limitations. Do you remember Second Life? Second Life was in 2003. It was arguably the first major metaverse environment which was built, and it was built on the very one guiding principle: be nice. So this was the first core principle that was that Second Life was built on. What happened? The approach was cool until it wasn't, because unpleasant or harmful player behavior, because this was a place where gamers can get along and playing games together, but they started to behave inappropriate. They started to bring in inappropriate images or other uncomfortable situation proliferately quickly in the space. So what the builders realized is that they were doing it wrong. The principle that they were using to build it, be nice, was not actually what they had to do. So they realized that they should have built it based on trust and safety. Yeah, as from the start, as from the beginning. So this is why you need to make a teams with people. You cannot just let developers develop. You also have to bring in new other information, and some of them are regulated, some of them are not. So, yeah.
That's a very perfect point from Mr. Alexandru and Dr. Jain. Did a wonderful discussion on this wonderful question which has been raised by participants. They are having in their mind whom we have to blame actually, and whom we should raise the liability. But actually, there is no one to whom you can raise the liability, as we are dealing we are working in the same team. We are working for the one thing, and that part of the every project is divided into every team. So you can't predict who is responsible actually. So there's wonderful answers. So we can skip the next question, as we have discussed this in the earlier slide. So we can proceed to the last question. This is for Dr. Jain. There may be a lack of transparency about how user activity in the metaverse is monitored. So how we can identify the monitoring, the logging report of the user activity in the metaverse, because it is being in the cloud platform. Everything which we are doing on the metaverse products, that is stored in the cloud. So how we can say that the right user, the right employee of the metaverse having the right access rights of the user activity?
I think that's a really good question, and I think we probably need to crowdsource the answer from everyone on the panel, but I'm happy to give it a start. So I think that the first thing is this issue of digital identity and how you're identifying who the users of the metaverse are in the first place. I think the second is this issue about whether it's, you know, a big tech closed metaverse or whether it's an open Web3 metaverse, because if it's an open Web3 metaverse, then that can be transparently monitored. The third point, which was a little bit to the point that I was making before, is we've got a concentration risk with 2 cloud providers providing the majority of cloud services globally. And I think that, you know, this is a risk for everyone. And it's interesting, I'm in Europe at the moment, and they're looking at developing their own cloud for Europe because they don't like that concentration risk. So I think that there are many issues. And as I said before, because you're going to be collecting all of this data, this haptic data, the data from all of these IoT devices that are connected to other devices, a bad actor, if you like, who can get control of all this data and who can know more about people than they possibly know about themselves, could potentially use this for influencing human behavior in a negative way, or in sort of surveillance and control of people. For sure, these are risks. But I'll let the others maybe have a go at that. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, the hijacking of accounts, as you were saying earlier, is one of the main risks of cloud security, but then you also have misconfiguration, you have unauthorized access, you have insecure interfaces, APIs, external sharing of data, malicious insiders, cyber attacks, so lack of visibility, pretty much all existing cyber threats of the cloud you have there as well. And yeah, this is a big issue about metaverse data, which is kept in the cloud. Where else can it be kept than in the cloud? So yeah, I just wanted to like underline your answer before, Dr. Jane.
Any other opinion?
No, I think, first of all, thank you to Dr. Thomason for outlining in the first part some key issues. I think one of the things that will happen is that we will, I'm sure, find smart ways to solve the problem. One is to look at separating the part which is already definite and where other examples can, or existing laws can effectively also be transported or translated into the metaverse. The other is to simultaneously look at new challenges, which are brand new, specific, and if you don't mind me saying, peculiar to the metaverse. Focusing on those instead of looking at reworking the whole system. I think one of the problems with internet law as it evolved is that in the early years, it tried to look at brand new laws for the internet, tried to look at brand new solutions to everything. I think that some of the old solutions will work, and we need to look at, come straight to the point and look at certain really important, key problems.
That's really great answer, sir. And any other opinion from Dr. Gagandeep?
Yeah, so I believe that in metaverse, if we consider jurisprudence point of view, the term legal entity and the legal personality, juristic person. So all these terminologies we need to reframe. And as the panel members have already discussed, that again the cyber crimes related to identity theft, identity issues, they are going to increase because again there is no authentic mode of cross-checking that who is entering into the metaverse and with whose identity. And another thing I can recollect that there is a hyper realistic avatar that is like Codex avatar by Meta. So these are so high tech technology that anybody can hide their actual identity. So the issue is going to be that a child can portray or can acquire the avatar of adult and vice versa. An adult can acquire the avatar of a minor or a child. So again, the age issues, who is minor, who is major, what will be the age of a child in metaverse. So all these things are going to be complex from legal perspective. Yes.
That's absolutely a valid point. So there's one question from my end. So what happens if any data breach occurs in Metaverse? So who do we need to inform? Who is the supervisory authority of the Metaverse? Like for the Meta, where it is situated, the server where it is situated, we never know where we can inform the data breach incident.
As per my research that I could recollect, that when we enter into a metaverse, we are entering into a platform which is on that metaverse. So there are consent agreement. Very obviously, it is not yet regulated, but still, if I am interacting or I am entering into the metaverse, there are few platforms or business platforms or the companies who are sponsoring that particular event. So when at the time of entering, there are consent form and terms and conditions, I believe little bit responsibility we can assign to them. So rest other panel members may add on.
So, any other opinion from the panelists?
I think that's a lawyer question. I'm going to stand down.
So yes, I believe that so far as I have studied about the metaverse and its policy regulation, there are so many business entities which are jumping into the metaverse. There are metaverse land owners, metaverse land renters, privacy policies, consent is there, and if the depth I studied GDPR. Everything is based on few fundamental principles. There are few fundamental principles if I would like to highlight. That number one is that consent, there is transparency, accountability, data minimization, the for what the purpose the data is being collected. Then there are certain rights which are given to the data subjects, like the right to review the information, right to erase, right to be forgotten, and right to ask for the information. So I believe that if with all these policy regulations we consider and enter into the metaverse with foolproof authenticity and more privacy enhanced mechanism like cryptography, blockchain. So I think we could regulate the upcoming challenges in metaverse. Yeah. Thank you.
Any additional points? Any add-ons?
I think we've got everything here, but the just like if I can draw a parallel to the development of internet law, it's a combination of architecture, government, private enterprise. And like I hinted in the beginning, there will be service providers who come forth to solve these problems, apart from government and policy makers. So I'm confident that there'll be a lot of activity. And we as human beings like a definite answer, a definite structure. So I think, this safety and comfort, fear and risk, privacy and transparency, all of this will be addressed. And I think the metaverse will have a bright future, irrespective of whatever little hurdles come along the way.
That's absolutely correct, sir.
I also want to mention something about responsibility, which I left out of the discussion because I think it brings us back to who is responsible and who carries me throughout the platform. Who is the person, who is the actual entity I relate to in the Metaverse platform. And there is also a big concern that people will want to use their avatar in multiple layers of Metaverse. They will want to use the same avatar, the same appearance in multiple layers. So I think I was thinking that it's not, we should actually make the user part of the responsibility it has in the Metaverse. So Metaverse cannot be built without the user. So I think users have to be a very important part of the process when it comes to responsibility. And I think they should, any company that builds the Metaverse should have a question framework for the user and asking actually the user what they think about the responsibility of the Metaverse, who they think should be responsible. I think we should also make the user part of the Metaverse process. And this was actually one of the things that was being highlighted by Accenture. They were thinking about it. And I think we had this tendency of letting the user out. Well, I think we should put the user in front of any code, of any question we have, and actually ask the user.
That's a wonderful insight from Mr. Alexandru. And there's another point from my end is what happened, like, as we are discussing related to data privacy in Metaverse. So how we can make sure that a Metaverse is data privacy compliant? How we can see the lawfulness of data processing activity is conducted or is being performed in Metaverse as per the principle defined in the GDPR or the relevant laws of the global countries? Or how we can say the data minimization is being performed very well, not actual or not extra information they are collecting more than what they are required.
Yeah, it's a very big question. If I may take the first answer, I think it was a point which was made earlier that privacy is a problem, and it's one of the main issues that keeps users from accessing Metaverse. They do not trust Metaverse as they do not actually trust the social media platforms. This doesn't mean that they do not use the social media platforms. It's just that the reluctancy of using the internet in this way is more and more questioned from a privacy perspective. I will answer for the GDPR. Data minimization is already, or it's still a struggle in the companies. Data minimization is directly linked to data retention. So we have to retain data for as much as possible, but only when it comes to the scope that we have. So the scope has to be very well defined, and we should not keep data further than the scope we have defined. However, if you let companies define retention, then you will have chaos. This is what happens now. We have such few legislations, few legislations who actually indicate retention terms. So the builders of Metaverse will, or the regulators of Metaverse should have into their consideration, should keep into their consideration to make sure that they indicate retention terms for multiple layers of Metaverse. This is when it comes to data retention. When it comes to other privacy principles, I do agree that consent is hard to get in the metaverse. I would actually be interested in joining a metaverse program to be able to see it, to be able to log in it, to understand which are the actual issues. Now I'm just talking based on a few games I played, and based on some movies I saw, but I wasn't in contact with actual metaverse. Accenture invites you to join metaverse to see their San Francisco office. So you can actually do that. I think you can actually ask them how you can join this program. I think it's interesting, but consent will be hard to get. Data retention will be an issue. Access and actually what GDPR requests when it comes to access, to provide copies of all the access, of all the data processing you have. This is something that will be a challenge for the metaverse. So this is why I think there should be a separate legislation which interconnects with the ones existing and takes the best out of the ones existing.
Any other point from anyone?
So I agree with Mr. Alexandru on the application of GDPR. Basically, if we see the application of GDPR, it is locality based. It does not deal with the data to whom from the origin of the person. It deals with the place where the data is being processed. This is the first point of application of GDPR, that it is locality based. That if it is being processed in Europe, then GDPR will be applicable. Now the thing is that metaverse, it is in virtual world. So jurisdiction is itself a very inherent problem of the internet, and even in cybercrime cases, we need to struggle with the point that where jurisdiction lies. So when we talk about metaverse, the problem is going to be more serious, because internet is not just internet now, now the deep web, dark net, where the IP addresses are not going to be traced. It's a challenge for the police officers and police investigating agencies, how to trace the actual criminals or the gang of criminals. So in a metaverse, this situation is going to be more serious. And implementation of GDPR is still till date, it is in that specific European countries. But metaverse is going to be without any jurisdiction, that is going to be without any country. It is somewhere in the cyberspace. So yes, this is a serious problem, and we need to make, just like Alexandru said, a different legislation for metaverse, irrespective of the geographical boundaries. Yes. Thank you.
I just want to add a comment, if I may. This is actually a really great conversation, and the panel is absolutely excellent. And we're all trying to think about what are the issues and how we might address the issues. And none of us have the answer. I must say, Professor Rodney, I really like the way that you're so positive and say people are going to come up with solutions to this. And I think that you're right. And I think that, Alexandru, your suggestion about actually getting in and looking at a number of different metaverses and doing some research on that. I'd love someone to fund some research on that, because, I mean, you can go into the Accenture metaverse for sure, but that's going to be very different from Roblox and very different from Decentraland. And I think that someone needs to get into a whole lot of different metaverses and start trying to document and classify what are the issues that they're finding, because I think we don't know enough about it yet, and it is absolutely a place for future research. Certainly there's a problem, but I don't think any of us are yet in a position to have really pinpointed and understood the problem well. And you may be right, it needs different, additional legislation. but the jurisdictional issues are clear, but also we're no good at monitoring the big techs now. So why do we think we're going to be better when they're in the metaverse? No. So I think, you know, we've got some challenges, but the great thing, and I really want to thank everyone on the panel, it's been such a productive and insightful conversation, and I've learned from all of you, and we're all learning together and we're all trying to solve these problems together. So I've just really appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I want to make an emphasis about legislation. I think because metaverse depends a lot on AI. I think when AI is going to be regulated, the enthusiasm for metaverse is going to pause. As the companies which are actually building artificial intelligence technologies are going to pause when it comes to their enthusiasm, because all of a sudden you have a set of provisions which you have to embed in the design concepts, right? By default or by design. So it's not going to be, yeah, let's do this because it sounds good, it looks good, it's going to help us. You are going to build a product which is available for everybody and beneficial for everybody. Unless it's beneficial, if it's beneficial just for you, then it's going to be unethical. So, yeah, I think the legislation is going to bring the enthusiasm down a little bit.
This actual point, there's a wonderful insight by Mr. Alexandru, Dr. Gagandeep, and Dr. Jain. And yes, the corporate persons who are engaged with these sessions, they can have a more insight how we can have a guidance, or how we can understand what is actually metaverse and what are the issues, like what Mr. Alexandru mentioned about the Accenture. So we all can look into it and we can see the problems and the things that evolve around in the metaverse, and we can similarly perform, like it is required in the organization to be implemented or not, and if it is required, and what other security measures should be taken, that based on the experience while using the metaverse. So any other opinion, any other questions from the panelists? So we are the verge of the ending of the session. I would request the participant to fill out the feedback form. And I would like to thanks to all the panelists for joining this session and connecting this a wonderful session with the expertise on metaverse and data privacy. And I hope the participants got a wonderful insight from you guys. That's really thank you for taking out the time from your tight schedule, especially Dr. Jain. She was stuck in the traffic and still she tried to join as soon as possible. Thank you so much, Dr. Jain.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. It was truly delightful.
Yeah, I'm thankful to my co-panelists. They all are wonderful, and really I learned a lot from Alexandru, Dr. Jain, Rodney sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rishabh, for the invitation.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you all the persons or to the participants who are attending this session, and really great to have the conversation on this topic, which is like a hot topic right now, as we are moving to the AI world. The products are engaging, and like the technologies are developing in a faster way. The AI is a part of now our human life. It's a part of our life. Whatever we do, we just rely on the AI. AI can do it. So what are the issues in it and how we can secure ourselves? I think the most of the thing being clear to the participant. Thank you so much. Thank you to Techlawedge for connecting this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, the panelists and respected participants, for taking out time, and especially to the panelists for this insightful and knowledgeable session.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank
Techlawedge,
you,
for having me, and the panelists and the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the participants are required to fill in the feedback form, the link for which has already been shared in the chat.